Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Founders Day 2024. I am Colby Reed, and as a lifelong theater nerd, I am thrilled to be joining you today for today's conversation about the arts, culture, and education sector. I'm joined by Lauren Schmidt-Dunlop, who is the Senior Director for Arts, Culture, and Education. And just before we get started, a couple of brief housekeeping items for everyone. First of all, this session is being recorded. We do welcome you to share the recording with anyone in your network after the event. It'll be posted on our website, and you will get an email with the recording as well. We also will have some opportunity at the end for a little bit of audience Q&A. So if you have questions about the arts, culture, and education sector, you're welcome to drop those in the Q&A box. I can tell you right now, if the question is our organization eligible for a grant? We're not going to be able to do that one by one. We do have some great information on our website for that to help you. If that is your question, we encourage you to check there. That being said, we're excited to welcome you to Founders Day. As many of you know, Founders Day is a long-standing tradition here at the Murdoch Trust, where it gives us an opportunity to reflect on our opening in June of 1975, gives us an opportunity to think about and celebrate and support all of those amazing organizations that are doing good in the spirit of the common good across the Pacific Northwest, and also reflect on the life and legacy of our benefactor, Jack Murdoch, and how that's living into our work today. And that's something that we're going to talk about with Lauren here as we talk about the arts, culture, and education sector. Now, Lauren, before we get into some of the details, I'd love if we could start at kind of a 30,000-foot view, the proscenium view, again, for our theater fans out there, and look at why the Trust chooses to invest time and resources in these programs. So can you share a bit about why arts, culture, and education are a priority at the Trust?
Absolutely. And full disclosure, I'm an art history student, not a theater student. So if I'm a little nervous, you know why. But Colby is my great compatriot here and helping me through this. So, why does the Trust have a long history funding arts, culture, and education? Well, it's because we believe in the missions. We believe in the power of the programming of these arts and culture and education nonprofits. And we're inspired by the impact that they have in the lives of so many in the Pacific Northwest. And really, it's in honor also of Jack Murdoch, who believed in the power of creativity in all its forms.
He was a big fan of the arts personally, as well as his mother, correct?
I understand that to be true.
Now, arts, culture, and education, these are very broad sectors that we're talking about. If we did a review of the nonprofits the Trust has funded in those areas, say, just the past 5 or 10 years, we're going to see a rich diversity of missions and programming and ultimately the people whose lives are impacted by that work of those nonprofits. And I'd like to get into each area with a little bit more detail. So can we start just by expanding on how does the Trust work in the arts community?
Absolutely. Well, arts is a small word, but it is a very broad sector. So just to go a little deeper, we fund in performing arts in all its genres. We fund in visual arts, literary and media arts. We fund residency-based nonprofits who serve individual artists. We fund arts centers. And we also, of course, fund arts education. So it's a broad spectrum, and it's as creative as you can imagine across the Pacific Northwest.
And that's, I think, is an important thread that I know we're going to touch on kind of through this conversation, but it's not just the diversity of the arts programs, but those arts programs are also unique to the geography of the region, correct? It's very unique to each community.
Oh, yes. And I'd like to also point out that arts organizations, their work isn't just in between four walls of a building or on the stage of a theater. They are embedded in their communities, and they're doing incredible work in their schools, like Maestro in the schools, or writers in poetry. You're bringing poetry into the schools and those kind of things. Like, it's just in the community as well. So a shout out to the arts organizations, because they get that. They really understand that the community is where their heart is, and that's who they're serving.
And I think it's interesting how you talk about how art ties into community, because art and culture are also very closely linked in terms of threads that support a region. Culture is a representation of a people, a community through time. That shows up in the cultural institutions of today, as well as how those cultural institutions preserve history for a community, for a region.
Absolutely.
Can you share a bit more about how the Trust invests in the culture space?
Oh, absolutely. We again have deep investment in with cultural institutions. To be specific, we fund museums of every type, including children's museums, which are super fun, historical societies, historic preservation. We also fund zoos, aquariums, and gardens. So these organizations, these cultural organizations, they are places where people gather. They are places of learning, of honoring, of understanding, of building empathy. So important, and especially in our world today. But one of the other really interesting pieces I've found and I've learned at my time here at the Trust is cultural institutions do lots of research, and they do it continually. And that research is then contributed to their individual sectors, respective sectors. And people come to these institutions to research as well. So a shout out to the researchers and a shout out to the cultural organizations that provide that space.
And many of those cultural organizations, we actually did a series of videos about 2 years ago about why the Trust invests in the arts. And one of those videos talks about cultural institutions and how those institutions are literally helping keep some cultures that have existed for hundreds of years alive through sharing language and art
Yes.
and all of those elements.
Culture is alive and well. Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. I appreciate you painting that picture for us. Again, another theater pun. Of the Trust investments in arts and culture. The last of the three sectors there, education, really core to the mission of so many nonprofits that we support. Perhaps it's the broadest reaching in a lot of ways of those three sectors. Can you help us kind of contextualize the Trust's investment in education?
Well, it is a cross-cutting element across actually all of our sectors, I would say. It's there, it's evident in every sector we work with. Under this sector, education points to early childhood learning, private K through 12 schools, innovative learning pathways, extracurricular activities outside of school, and higher education, and very broadly speaking, youth development. So all those areas are pointed to in this particular sector under arts, culture, and education. And so it's super important, obviously, to the work we do. It was absolutely important to Jack Murdoch. Again, another way that we honor Jack is through keeping education in front of us all the time.
And a lot of those organizations that we support outside of kind of the traditional K through 12 model, you know, the Code Girls United, the Junior Achievements of the World. Those are organizations that really, you know, bring forward Jack's legacy as well, because they're inspiring the subjects that mattered to him, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. They point towards career development. They point towards entrepreneurship. They point towards self-esteem. There's just so much that those nonprofits do for our children and our youth. And, you know, again, it's the trustees really believe in supporting those nonprofits.
Excellent. Now, we've talked about kind of the differences of the three sectors. You've got arts is very unique, culture is very unique, education is very unique, but there's also a deep connection between them as well.
I like to say, if you could imagine an invisible thread running through arts, culture, and education, these threads would be the threads of understanding, of empathy, of joy, of creativity, and really just an appreciation of all God's creation.
I'd like to spend a little bit more on kind of the segment around education, because, you know, when people hear education, they tend to think that K through 12, maybe higher ed, maybe a little pre-K. But at the Trust, when we think about education, it's really much broader than that. It's really about educating the whole person, right?
Oh, absolutely. We look at that from very different angles and very different lenses. But what we see often are things like organizations come to us for co-curricular programs that help students from all backgrounds to learn. Our arts, the museums, zoos, and aquariums, they're purpose-built for learning for all ages. And that is where education ignites, whether you are a toddler or you are 99 years old, education is just filtered throughout those institutions. So we recognize that, and we see that a lot in the applications that come forward. These, again, arts, culture, and education nonprofits, it's in their DNA. It's in their DNA, and it really is something I speak about a lot to folks who, when we talk about why arts, culture, and education are so important, it's foundational. It really is.
And it's interesting to me, we talk a lot about innovation in the nonprofit sector, and we talk about how important innovation was to Jack as a leader, as an entrepreneur. And when you really think about it, a lot of those educational organizations that we fund, again, the zoos, the science museums, the junior achievements, they're finding ways to make learning fun and engaging. They're finding ways to meet students where they are and engage them in these new careers that are coming forward.
Yeah, they absolutely are. As a parent, I appreciate that every time I work with one of these nonprofits, just to see the ways that they think creatively. And our children need that.
You've laid out quite a bit of the work that we're already doing in these spaces. One of the benefits of the transition that we've made to our sectoral model at the Trust has been an ability to go deeper into these areas of service and kind of better wrap our heads around what's going on in these areas and how we can maximize our impact in communities across the Pacific Northwest. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what you're hoping to see, what you're hoping to learn as we lean into these new models.
Yes. Well, we have been working hard the last 18 months or so, and it's been a really enriching time, and really thankful to Romanita and to Pauline and to our trustees to give us this time as professionals to learn from, we're taking a posture of learning from our nonprofits and learning so that we can serve them better. So in these sector models, we're going deeper and we're learning more specifically the issues that are facing our arts, culture, and education nonprofits, and listening, and then bringing that back to the Trust. And as we work on these sector models, we're thinking of innovative ways to come in and support these organizations, perhaps in different ways. And so we hope that through this work, and it's ever changing, I mean, it's not static. That's the great thing about this model too, is that it really leans into learning again. We are looking to help support nonprofits so that we're building thriving arts communities, so that we're helping innovative educational models, inspiring cultural institutions, and helping develop programs for youth that ignite learning and confidence and all the things that are important to our children in this world. So it's really all points back to what our trustees were talking about earlier, which is flourishing for the common good in the Pacific Northwest. It's really that kind of work. And so it's been work, but we're looking forward to going even further with it.
Excellent. We do have a wonderful audience that's watching us live, and there have been a lot of questions already coming in. If you have a question for Lauren about the arts, culture, and education sector, we might have time for a couple more questions before we have to wrap up. Please feel free to drop those into the Q&A box. But would love to start with, you talked a little bit about the innovative spirit of the arts, culture, and education sector. What are some technical innovations or maybe experimentations that the Trust has seen emerging from arts and culture education organizations over the last couple of years?
So coming out of COVID, technology has been a big theme. And so what we're seeing are requests for things around helping with, in theaters, for example, set design, and lighting design and technology that they're bringing into the craft of theater. It's fascinating. We're looking at immersive museum exhibits, things that are going to engage visitors in a different way. And then on a practical side, but on a very needed side, we're seeing requests for technology solutions that will help bring together, say, an integrated CRM system. So that helps the marketing and the development departments, things like that. So very practical behind the scenes kind of requests. But again, the trust has a long history of funding technology, and we, again, honor our founder, Jack Murdoch, because that was his love. And so we're always thrilled to see some really great ideas come through the door. We want to help these nonprofits, harness that digital revolution. And so it's coming, it's here, so we're ready.
Excellent. From the funder's point of view, this is an interesting question. It kind of builds on what you were just saying about, the technological revolution and the need for innovation. What are some of the big challenges you're seeing museums specifically facing right now?
Oh, great question. Our great institutions and museums, the largest to the smallest. One of the things I'm learning from talking to museum leaders and learning from some research I've done is that the good news is attendance in general has come back for many of the museums, not necessarily 100%, but close to pre-pandemic levels. It's the frequency of the visitorship that is still lagging, and it's because human behavior changed during COVID. There's other factors too. So our wonderful institutions, museums and performing arts and other sector organizations in that sector, it's learning what's happening with that behavior. How do we come around that, and how do these organizations find the ways to re-engage, to bring people back, to see the incredible work they're doing? It really is uplifting to see the work and the thought and the care that these organizations are approaching. So I'm always inspired by, the museum that we get to work with, but all the organizations in this sector. COVID was really a difficult time for the arts, culture, and education, and by golly, they're coming back. So super proud of them.
And that's one of the things I think is wonderful about the trust, being a responsive funder. We're able to gather all of that feedback and hear what's been working, but then we're also looking to how can we share that out, right? We're looking at how can we kind of provide that almost hub role, community convener role to bring organizations together and help facilitate that sharing of learning, right?
Yeah, we're looking at that through our sector model for sure. It's going to be one of the focus points that we utilize, because that if we learn nothing from COVID, we learn that we are better together, that we miss each other. And that's what we are hoping that in the next year, we're working towards connecting and learning and taking that posture of learning and bringing it back to the trust so that we can serve and support our arts and culture and education nonprofits better.
You talked about, COVID and, that was a huge challenge, particularly for performing arts venues.
Yes.
And really kind of across all three, because cultural institutions that rely on individuals coming into facilities, hosting gatherings, things like that, education settings as well. There are a lot of challenges there. You also talked a little bit about the innovations that came out of there. Are there any outcomes from COVID that you're seeing that have you excited or enthusiastic or optimistic as you're thinking about, the arts and culture community, and you're thinking about those technological innovations and ways that organizations were able to reach a new audience or connect in new ways or diversify the way that they present their product? Were there any, that jump to mind?
Well, just in the conversations that I've had with arts and culture organizations, first of all, a lot of them pivoted to live streaming. Not all of them are going to stay with that, but they have been able to offer their programming to such a broader audience by doing that. They've also were able to collaborate across the country, across the world, and I've heard that from from many of the arts leaders. Like it really opened the door of thinking about collaboration. So those are some of the things that come to mind, and I think well, obviously just the tip of the iceberg. It will COVID allowed us to step back, just take a reflection and to see how we could do things differently. And of course, in arts, culture, and education, they're just wired to be creative. So lots to come, lots of exciting things, I would say, coming down the pike in the next few years. And that's what we're excited to see too.
Excellent. One last question that I think is a great way to kind of wrap up our conversation here. Do you have any final thoughts, any things that we maybe haven't touched on that you want to make sure the audience walks away with from today's conversation as we're thinking about these three sectors and the trust work in them as we move forward?
Absolutely. As I was preparing for this, I couldn't help but see the faces of all the people, hopefully some of them here today, who make these nonprofits what they are today. I can't forget that, and I want to acknowledge and say a humble thank you to all the people, from the founders of many of these nonprofits who are still shoulder to shoulder with their staff making it happen, to the executive leadership, to their staff, to the volunteers who step in the gap every day. God bless them. And to the board members, the devoted board members who help these nonprofits keep the plate spinning. That has been a big takeaway the last few years. And I just want to say thank you, because they're the people behind these nonprofits are what make it work. So, and they're a privilege to work with.
And as someone who has the opportunity and the privilege to work alongside you, I want to thank you for all that you do to lead these organizations and serve them. You are an incredible partner to work with. Lauren Schmidt Dunlop, our Senior Director for Arts, Culture, and Education, thank you so much for your time today.
You, Colby.
That brings us to the end of our time. One final note before we wrap up. If you'd like to learn more about the work of the Trust, some of our grantees, particularly in the arts, culture, and education spaces, our annual report did go live just this morning. It is gorgeous, if I do say so myself, and you can view that murdochtrust.org/annual report. Also with that, Lauren, again, thank you so much for your time and insights. A recording of this session will be available. It will be emailed to all of you as folks who registered. It'll also be posted on our website. In the meantime, we'd love for you to share that with your network, and thank you so much for tuning in, and have a happy Founders Day.
I know.